Now let's move on to data manipulation in Pandas. And before we do anything with Pandas, we have to import it. So let's import Pandas. And let's put a CSV into our data frame. pd.read_CSV. And the name of our file is countries.csv. This file will be available for you to download if you want to follow along. So now let's look at our data frame. Oh, the name of our file is top 10 countries. See it here, top 10 countries.csv. Now let's run that. And you see here we have our data frame. To check the shape of our data frame, we could just write data frame shape. Let's run that. And you see it's 10 rows and 6 columns, like we see up here. To check the data types, write df.dtypes. Let's run that. And you see the data types of the columns in our data frame. If we want to check the columns, we could simply write dataframes.columns. So now let's move on to renaming a column. And to change the column name in the data frame, we use the rename method. So let's look at our data frame. So let's change the name of this column here. So we say dataframe.rename. And in between brackets, we put the columns and we put it like a dictionary. So we put our countries/dependency. And then we put what we want to change it to. We only want to change it to country. And then we want to set in place to true so the changes stays in our data frame. And now let's run that. And you see the column name was changed. To delete a column, we use the drop argument. So let's call our data frame .drop. And let's say we want to drop the date column. In between braces, we put column equals date and set the in place to be true. And now let's call our data frame. Let's run that. And you see the date column was deleted. And let's move on to add a column. Let's add a column called population in millions. So we rally our data frame and then we put what we want the name of our columns to be. So population in millions. And what we want this column to have, we want to divide the population column by 1 million. And then let's round it to 2 decimal places. So let's put our data frame. We want our population column. And we want to divide that by 1 million. And then we said we want to round it by 2. And the round takes 2 arguments. It takes whatever we want to round. And the next argument is the decimal places. So we want to round it by 2 decimal places. And now let's run that. And you see we created our column, which divided the population by 1 million and rounded it by 2. Let's create a column that joins 2 string columns or 2 object columns. Let's create a column called country/region, and we want to put the countries/the region. So let's create our column, and we want country/region. And what we want in that column, we want the values in the country column. It's a capital C. Then we want to add a slash, and then we want to add the region column. And let's look at our data frame. Oh, we need to put this in between quotes. So now let's run that. And now you see we created our column that joined the values in the country and region column. So now let's change the data types of a column. Now let's check the data types of the column. And you see the percentage of the world is an object. So let's change it to a float. But before we do that, we need to remove the percent sign. So let's create a function to remove the percent sign. And then we want to return x, and we're gonna do a negative step value. So now let's run that. Let's call in our function. Now let's put a value in our column. And let's run that. And you see the percent sign was moved. So now let's use the apply function to apply it to our column. So let's call our percentage of world column. Let me see that I'm spelling it right. We're gonna write dot apply, and then we wanna apply our function that we created. Now let's run that. And you see it removed the percent in the column. So now let's assign it to our column. We call out our column. And we set that equals to what we did here. Now let's call our data frame. And now you see the percentage was removed. Now let's check the data type. It should be the same. And we see that it's an object. So now that we remove the percent sign and it just has the decimal, we can change this column, its data type, into a float. So let me just copy this. And we set that equals to the column. And then we use our as type function. And then in brackets, we write float. So now let's check the data type. And you see the data type for the percentage of the world column was changed. So now let's deal with datetime columns. But before we do this, let's load another CSV file. And the name of our CSV is psychohires.csv. We need to put it in between quotes. Now let's call out our variable. And you see we get our data frame. I want to drop this column. tf2.drop columns, and we set that equals to the name of our column. And we want to set the in place to true. Now let's call out our data frame. And you see the column was dropped. Let's look at the data type. And we see that the day is an object. So let's change that into a datetime data type. So one way we could do this, let's set our variable, and we set that equals to, we want our day column. And then we use the as type function, and we want the datetime data type. So now let's run that. Oh, we actually need to, because we want to change the column. Let's remove that period. And now let's run that. And now let's check the data type. And you see we changed the data type for our day column. It was an object, now it's a datetime column. Another way we can do this is with the toDatetime function, and we won't get this error. Now let's set that to pd.to_datetime, and in between brackets we put our column. Now let's check the data types. It will do the same thing, but without the error. So it's better to do it this way, because you see we get this little warning message. So to change a column into a datetime data type, you should just follow this way. We can use the datetime model to convert a datetime data type to a string. And when we do that, we can display the dates as months or year. But first we need to import datetime. So let me do that. And let's run that. And now let's look at our data frame. Actually, our second data frame. And let's say we want to extract the month and the year from this date. All right, call it our column, day, dt.strf time, and in between brackets we put a percentage and b, and the percentage b is the format code for the month, percentage y is the format code for the year. Let's run that. Oh, we made a mistake here. It's dt, not df, datetime, because we imported it as dt. Now let's run that. And you see we got the month and the year. So now let's add this into a new column, and we're gonna call our new column month/year. And we're gonna set that equals to what we just did here. Let's copy this, paste it, and now let's look at our data frame. And you see we made a month and year column, and we extracted the month and the year from our day column. So now let's move on to sorting the values, and let's sort the values by the number of bicycle hires in the descending order. Let's call out our data frame, and then we use the sort values function, and in brackets we want it by the number of bicycle hires. I'm just gonna copy this, and by default it comes in ascending order, but we want it in descending order, so we have to write in our ascending argument equals false and set the in place to true. And now let's look at our data frame, and you see it's sorted in descending order by the number of bicycle hires. If we want it in ascending order, we just remove the ascending argument, and let's run that. And you see now it's in ascending order. If we want to see the first 5 rows in our data frame, write df2.head, and by default it brings up 5. If we want 2, we just put in the number in between the braces. If we want the last 5 rows, we use the tail method, and let's run that. And see we get the last 5 rows in our data frame. If we want the last 3, we just put the value in between the brackets. One more thing I'll show you, df2, we could transpose the rows and columns, which simply means just flip it. So let's write our data frame.transpose, and let's run that. And you see we flipped our columns and index.